for coming and for being indoors on a very pretty fall day. I appreciate it. And I spoke recently at a college in Chicago about being an activist and what makes you an activist. And I told the students, the only thing I ever want you to do to figure that out is to do one thing, arrange one event or start one petition. Because if you do that and you're at the organizing end of one of these events, you realize just how hard it is to get all the pieces to come together and to get people to come and to have a good event. So, my gratitude really to you, Muzaffar, and to PAFA for just their commitment and in being hopeful enough and idealistic enough to bring people together and have an event like this. We all have very busy lives. Everyone here works and has all the stuff of life that comes with it. And so to come out and do this is really, it gives me a lot of hope for just the capacity of people to come together and to talk about their differences. So thank you very much. The other thing is, it was funny that he asked me if I wanted to sit here or stand here, but anytime I have Pakistanis in the audience, I always think of my mom sitting in the audience, and I have a horrible habit of fidgeting when I sit there, and so I'm thinking, I can just hear her voice in my head saying, you were moving your hands around too much, and you were, your legs were not crossed, and da-da-da. So that's why I have to stand behind a podium, because if I do fidget, you guys can't see it. So thank you for that introduction. Our topic today is Pakistan and the problem paradigm, and where this came from in my very, very initial discussions with Muzaffar when he started talking about this is because, of course, I'm a writer, and so I am, and you can take it either way, and a lawyer. So I'm obsessed with words because I've either spent my life picking out the right words or fighting about the right words. And so, it came from this realization is that, and what really it feels like as someone who is an intersectional person, I'm Pakistani and I'm American, to hear part of what is you, Pakistani, constantly associated with problem, terrorism. I mean, those words, if you want to do a Google search, do it, and you will see that the name of my country almost always follows either, these two very, very dark, dismal, grim, and terrifying words. And so the point of this conversation really was to kind of start talking about what that does both to Americans and what that does to Pakistanis and what it does to Pakistani Americans. In that sense, the story that I'm going to tell you today, to contextualize it properly, is that the position of the Pakistani American today is a very fraught and vexing position, because we're currently dealing with a double whammy, so to speak. A double whammy of both war and migration, and both of which are forces that transform the home you knew in very, very challenging ways. So, our first challenge is whenever we left Pakistan to come here, you always leave a country that you will never find again, because it will be gone the second you leave. And you will always go back as a migrant, and this is true not just of countries, but of people who move from towns or cities or states that you don't live in anymore. You always go back trying to find that memory, and you never can, because time has taken that away from you. So, that is always, I think that is one of the first tragedies of a migrant. And for us, Pakistani Americans now, the second tragedy is that of war. We are looking from afar at our country destroying itself every day. Every day we open up newspapers, and you're far, so you can't, so it's a very particular and poignant kind of helplessness with which you see what's happening, because you know that the people who are there are suffering more than you are, because they're living there and they're there. But in a sense, it's like watching someone you love die. because you can't rescue them, but you also can't stop looking at them, and you can't stop feeling for them. So, that is the context with which, for a long time, I've been writing, I guess, columns since I was about, since 2007, and I started for a very small, obscure newspaper, and then I moved to Dawn, in '09. And for the most part, I used to write about foreign policy and all of these dimensions that, or structural problems. You heard, my background is in political science, so a lot of it was analytical. But to be honest with you, in the past year, I find myself completely unable to write about those phenomena, because I feel, and this is an opinion, I'm an op-ed writer, that those abstractions of foreign policy, strategy, what should we do, what should we not do, aid, are essentially ways in which we make the problem not our own. It's not our problem. It's not our human problem. It's not a problem that affects me day to day. It's not in my family. It's not. It doesn't touch me in any way. So I stopped writing about those issues for the large part, because I felt that people were unable, Pakistanis and Americans, to see each other as human beings. America is a large abstract force for Pakistanis that they have a very complex and fraught relationship with. And for Pakistanis, and for Americans, Pakistan is this dark, sinister, grim place that they don't quite understand. So, the story I have for you today is a story that is that helps you kind of unravel some of the issues that I'm talking about. And it's a story that actually took place just this past week in Karachi, which is it's the city where I'm from. And of course, the Pakistanis here are familiar with it. But for Americans, this is a city that is at the southernmost tip, I would say, of Pakistan. So it's on the Arabian Sea. It's a city where, in terms of war, it's the city where NATO forces ship all the supplies that go to American troops in Afghanistan. So they all go through the Karachi harbor. They're taken from Karachi through Balochistan and then across into Afghanistan. So, in geostrategic terms, that's its importance. For me, of course, it's the city where I grew up and where I lived till I was about 18. And it's the city where my parents still live. And, it's a city that has transformed in the past. I mean, of course, all cities transform themselves, but in the past 10 years in a very drastic way, both because of natural disaster and because of war. So, we've had, as you know, a horrible earthquake in Pakistan in October 2008. And then we've had, for PAFA's collecting funds, and Ethan has worked very much, the floods for the past 2 years that have displaced literally hundreds of thousands of people. It's a city that was of refugees who migrated from India when Pakistan was created, and it's a city of new refugees which come fleeing floods, fleeing earthquakes, and fleeing drone attacks in the northwest of Pakistan, because they think it's the big city. So if you walk around in Karachi right now, it's extremely crowded. It's over 18 million people. So that means that there are people everywhere. There are no empty spaces in Karachi. And it's a city that has seen incredible amounts of both political and terrorist violence. So we've had, I believe, I don't have the exact number, almost, I believe, 2,000 people killed just this year in acts of political violence, and then several hundred killed, because of suicide bombing and terrorist attacks. So this is a story from last week in Karachi, in this city, and I'm going to ask you to imagine yourself in Karachi, in a city like that, where where everyone is really just trying to survive. That is the key word in Pakistan these days, survival, and that is because people feel such an incredible, crushing weight of both political turmoil as well as a very rapid sense of social change, of society changing because of new things that didn't exist before. So you've got obviously a virtualization of social relations. You've got, you know, a society that used to be segregated that now has other avenues of men and women interacting. So there's a lot of layers of changes going on, and Karachi in a very real way is like a hub of these. So this story takes place at an intersection in an area in Pakistan, in Karachi, called Gulistan-e-Johar. And Gulistan-e-Johar is one of the suburbs in Karachi. It's a very, very heavily populated suburb. It's full of many, many apartment buildings, just tiny, tiny apartments in which huge families just kind of cram themselves. So, you know, if you were driving through this street in Karachi and you looked around, you would see motorcycles with entire families on them, you know, 2, 3 kids, a husband and a wife. If you see a car, it's probably 10 people in it. So I mean, you know, you constantly, there's a very palpable sense of crowdedness every second that you're there now, because you can't escape it. Traffic